Hashtag they attacked Earth's healers. So we unleashed the Angels of Death. The medical station orbiting Kepler 442b was supposed to be neutral territory. Dr. Sarah Chun had believed that with every fiber of her being, as she worked tirelessly in the trauma bay, her hands covered in the blue-green blood of a wounded Zephyrian soldier. The Galactic Medical Accords were sacred, recognized by every civilized species in the galaxy. Medical personnel were off-limits during conflicts. Always. The explosion that tore through the station's eastern wing changed everything. Sarah was thrown against the bulkhead as the entire structure shuddered violently. Emergency lights bathed everything in hellish red as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Through the reinforced viewport, she could see the sleek, predatory shapes of Vorthan warships emerging from hyperspace jumps, their weapons already charging with that distinctive purple glow that had become the signature of their aggression. All medical staff to emergency stations. The station's AI announced with mechanical calm that seemed obscene given the circumstances. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Dr. Chin pulled herself upright, checking on her patient. The young Zephyrian's breathing was shallow, his feathered crest matted with blood. She had been in the middle of removing shrapnel from his chest cavity when the attack began. Around her, the trauma bay was in chaos. Equipment had been thrown from tables, and sparks flew from damaged medical scanners. Sarah, Dr. Marcus Webb, the station's chief of surgery, stumbled through the debris toward her. His usually pristine surgical scrubs were torn and stained. We need to evacuate the critical patients to the core sections. The Vorthans are targeting the medical bays specifically. The words hit her like a physical blow. That's impossible. They wouldn't dare violate the medical accords. Even the Vorthans aren't that barbaric. Another explosion rocked the station, this one closer. Through the communication system, they could hear panicked voices reporting casualties throughout the facility. The Healing Hands Medical Station was the largest neutral medical facility in this sector of the galaxy, treating wounded from all sides of the ongoing conflicts between various species. It had operated for over 50 years without a single attack. Dr. Webb's face was grim as he helped her stabilize the Zephyrian patient for transport. The Vorthans have decided that healing their enemies is an act of war itself. They're not just attacking the station, Sarah. They're hunting down every medical transport, every field hospital, every doctor who's ever treated a non-Vorthan patient. The implications crash down on her. The Vorthans weren't just breaking the medical accords. They were systematically targeting the entire concept of neutral medical aid. Every doctor, nurse, and medic who had ever taken the healer's oath was now considered an enemy combatant in their twisted logic. Dr. Chun had graduated from the Terran Medical Academy 15 years ago. She had volunteered for Frontier Medical Service because she believed that healing knew no borders, no species barriers. She had treated humans, Zephyrians, Kalari, even captured Vorthan soldiers with equal care and dedication. The idea that this made her a legitimate target was incomprehensible. Dr. Chun, incoming transmission from Earth Command, announced Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. The young officer's voice cracked with strain. They're ordering all Terran medical personnel to return to human space immediately. Sarah's hands never stopped working as she spoke. Tell Earth Command that I have 17 critical patients who can't be moved. I'm not abandoning them. Ma'am, with respect, you need to hear this message. The holographic display shimmered to life, revealing Admiral Rebecca Harrison, Chief of Terran Defense Forces. The Admiral's usually composed demeanor was replaced by something Sarah had never seen before, barely contained fury. To all Terran medical personnel in contested space, Admiral Harrison began, her voice carrying an edge that could cut steel. As of 0600 hours Terran Standard Time, the Vorthan hegemony has declared total war on all medical facilities and personnel not directly serving their military forces. In the past 12 hours, they have destroyed 14 medical stations, 17 hospital ships, and countless field hospitals. Current casualties among medical personnel across all species exceed 40,000. Sarah's blood ran cold. 40,000 healers, murdered for the crime of trying to save lives. The Admiral continued. The Vorthans have made their position clear. They consider medical aid to their enemies an act of war. They have voided the medical accords and declared all medical personnel legitimate military targets. Therefore, the Terran Medical Corps is hereby dissolved as a civilian organization and incorporated into Terran Defense Forces, effective immediately. The transmission paused as another explosion shook the station. When Admiral Harrison resumed speaking, her expression had become something that would haunt Sarah's dreams. To the Vorthans, if you're monitoring this transmission, you wanted a war without mercy. You've attacked the most sacred institution in galactic civilization. You've murdered those whose only weapon was compassion, whose only ammunition was hope. The Admiral's eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at each viewer. You have awakened something in humanity that we have kept carefully controlled for generations. We try to be healers in this galaxy. We try to be the good guys. Admiral Harrison leaned forward slightly, and her next words were delivered with the cold precision of a death sentence. We're done trying. The transmission ended, leaving the trauma bay in stunned silence. Even the wounded seemed to sense that something fundamental had changed in the galaxy's power balance. Dr. Chen looked around at her colleagues, seeing the same mixture of shock and dawning realization on every face. Dr. Webb was the first to speak. What does she mean? We're being inducted into the military. Lieutenant Torres, who had been monitoring other communication channels, looked up with wide eyes. Doctors, you need to see this. Terran fleets are moving throughout the galaxy. Not just medical evacuations. Combat fleets. Dozens of them. The display showed a tactical overview of human space and the surrounding sectors. Red icons representing Terran military vessels were streaming out from every major human system, converging on areas where Vorthan forces operated. It was the largest military mobilization in human history. They're sending warships to every location where medical personnel were attacked, Torres continued, her voice barely above a whisper. The fleet databases are being updated in real time. New ship classifications are appearing: Medical Vengeance class destroyers, Hippocratic Oath battle cruisers, Angels of Death carriers. Dr. Chin stared at the display in disbelief. Angels of Death? That's not. Humans don't aim ships like that. Ma'am, Torres interrupted, checking her console. Incoming priority message from Terran Command. All medical personnel are to prepare for immediate evacuation. Terran Marines are en route to secure this facility. Terran Marines? Dr. Webb asked. What are Marines doing in neutral space? The answer came in the form of brilliant flashes of light outside the viewports. Terran ships dropped out of hyperspace with military precision, their hulls bearing medical crosses alongside weapons that Sarah had never seen before. These weren't the peaceful exploration vessels or defensive ships she was familiar with. These were warships designed for a single purpose: overwhelming destruction. The lead ship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the largest Vorthan vessels, positioned itself between the medical station and the attacking Vorthan fleet. Its hull was pristine white with red medical crosses, but bristling with weapon systems that made it clear this was no hospital ship. Attention Vorthan vessels, came a broadcast that echoed through space on all frequencies. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran warship Surgeon's Blade. You have violated the medical accords and attacked neutral medical personnel. Under Terran military law, this constitutes an act of supreme barbarism warranting immediate and total retaliation. The Vorthan fleet, 12 ships strong, held position. Their commander's response was filled with the arrogance that had made them so despised throughout the galaxy. Human vessel, you're interfering with a legitimate military operation. The soft hearts who treat our enemies are enemies themselves. Withdraw or be destroyed. Captain Vasquez's response was delivered with surgical precision. Negative. The Terran Federation has issued new rules of engagement. Any force that attacks medical personnel forfeits all rights to mercy, medical treatment, or prisoner status. You wanted to fight without honor. We'll accommodate that request. What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The surgeon's blade didn't just attack the Vorthan fleet. It systematically dismantled them with a level of efficiency that was terrifying to witness. Each shot was precisely calculated to disable key systems without destroying the ships outright. Engines were crippled, weapon systems were surgically removed, life support was left barely functional. Within minutes, the entire Vorthan fleet was drifting helplessly in space, their crews trapped in slowly dying vessels. "Vorthan fleet," Captain Vasquez announced. "Your ships have been neutralized. Under the traditional rules of war, we would now offer medical assistance to your wounded and accept your surrender. However, you have declared war on the very concept of medical mercy." The pause that followed was filled with the sound of dying ships and desperate emergency transmissions from the Vorthan vessels. "Therefore, you will receive exactly the same medical consideration you offered to the 40,000 healers you murdered today." None. Dr. Chun watched in horror as the Terran ships simply waited. The Vorthan crews were transmitting increasingly desperate pleas for assistance, reporting casualties, and failing life support systems. The humans did nothing. "This is monstrous," she whispered. "They're letting them die." Dr. Webb, who had served in frontier medicine for 30 years, shook his head slowly. "No, Sada. This is justice. The Vorthans made the rules. The humans are just following them." Over the next hour, as Terran Marines efficiently evacuated the medical station, Sarah watched the Vorthan ships go dark one by one. No rescue ships came. No medical aid was offered. The proud Vorthan fleet that had attacked a hospital became 12 tombstones drifting in the void. But even more chilling was the message that Captain Vasquez transmitted throughout the galaxy as the evacuation concluded. "To all civilized species, the Terran Federation wishes to make our new position clear. We had hoped to contribute to galactic civilization through medicine, exploration, and peaceful cooperation. The Vorthan hegemony has made that impossible by declaring war on the sacred institution of neutral medical care." The transmission included detailed footage of every destroyed medical facility, every murdered doctor and nurse, every hospital ship turned into floating wreckage. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing from all medical missions not directly serving our allies. Our hospitals are closed to Vorthan casualties. Our research will no longer be shared with species that attack healers. Our medical expertise will no longer be offered to those who mistake mercy for weakness. Captain Vasquez paused, allowing the implications to sink in. Terran medical technology was the most advanced in the galaxy. Human doctors had developed treatments for diseases that had plagued other species for millennia. Terran medical facilities have been the last hope for countless beings throughout known space. However, the captain continued, "We understand that actions have consequences. The Vorthans have chosen to fight a war without honor, without mercy, and without the basic decency that separates civilization from barbarism. Very well, we will show them what humans become when we stop trying to heal and focus entirely on harm." The screen displayed technical specifications for the new Terran warships. The weapon systems were unlike anything previously seen in galactic warfare. Instead of simple energy weapons or kinetic projectiles, these ships carried something called therapeutic weapon systems. These new vessels carry medical knowledge converted into instruments of warfare, Captain Vasquez explained with the calm professionalism of a surgeon describing a procedure. "Our weapons are designed using detailed knowledge of Vorthan physiology, psychology, and biology. We know exactly how to cause maximum suffering while keeping subjects alive as long as possible. We know which neural pathways to stimulate to cause unbearable agony. We know how to disable their immune systems to let their own bodies become instruments of torment." Dr. Chun felt sick listening to the description, but she couldn't tear herself away. To the Vorthan hegemony, specifically, you attacked our healers because you thought compassion was weakness. You were wrong. Compassion was what made us safe to be around. It was what kept us from showing you what apex predators look like when they stop pretending to be civilized. The transmission ended with coordinates for Vorthan homeworlds and a simple countdown timer. 72 hours. As the evacuation ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying the medical staff away from the destroyed station, Dr. Chen stared out at the wreckage of the Vorthan fleet. In the space of a few hours, everything she thought she knew about humanity's place in the galaxy had been shattered. They had been the healers, the mediators, the species that other civilizations called upon to treat their wounded and broker peace agreements. Now, they were becoming something else entirely. Something that made even seasoned frontier doctors feel afraid. But as she remembered the faces of colleagues who had died in the attacks, as she thought about the 40,000 healers who had been murdered for the crime of showing mercy, Sarah Chun found that she wasn't entirely opposed to humanity's transformation. The Vorthans wanted a war without mercy. They were about to get exactly what they asked for. The medical station drifted away behind them, a broken monument to the old galaxy where healers were sacred and some things were off-limits even in war. That galaxy was dying, murdered by those who thought compassion was weakness. What was being born in its place would teach the universe that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is attack someone who has dedicated their life to saving others. Because when healers stop healing and start hurting, they know exactly where it hurts the most. The Terran medical evacuation ship Mercies carried 547 rescued medical personnel from 17 different species through hyperspace toward Earth. Dr. Sarah Chun sat in the passenger compartment, watching colleagues she had worked alongside for years struggle to process what they had witnessed. The ship itself was a testament to how quickly things had changed. Just days ago, it had been a peaceful medical transport named Healing Light. Now it bore weapons systems that could reduce a city to ash and a new name that sent chills through anyone who heard broadcast. Dr. Kalara, the Zephyrian surgeon Sarah had trained alongside, approached with her feathers still matted from the attack. Sarah, have you seen the reports coming in from other sectors? Chen shook her head. She had been avoiding the news feeds, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in a universe that seemed to be rapidly losing its mind. Kalara activated her personal communicator, displaying holographic news feeds from across the galaxy. The images were devastating. Hospital ships burning in space. Medical facilities on planetary surfaces reduced to craters. Bodies of doctors, nurses, and medical volunteers floating in the void, their lifeless hands still clutching medical supplies they had died trying to deliver. The Zephyrian Medical Guild reports over 8,000 casualties, Kalara said quietly. The Kalari Alliance has lost 15 hospital worlds. Even the crystalline collective's healing matrices have been targeted. The Vorthans aren't just attacking human medical personnel, Sarah. They're trying to destroy the very concept of medical neutrality throughout the galaxy. Dr. Chen studied the images, feeling a cold rage building in her chest. She had spent her entire adult life believing that healing was a universal language, something that transcended species barriers and political conflicts. The systematic destruction of that ideal was like watching someone burn libraries filled with the accumulated wisdom of centuries. There's more, Kalara continued, switching to another news feed. The human response isn't limited to military action. They've begun what they're calling medical sanctions. Every human doctor, researcher, and medical facility has been ordered to cease all cooperation with species that maintain diplomatic relations with the Vorthan hegemony. The implications hit Sarah immediately. Human medical technology was generations ahead of most galactic civilizations. Terran universities graduated the most skilled doctors in known space. Human pharmaceutical companies produced medicines that had eliminated diseases throughout the galaxy. If humanity withdrew from galactic medicine entirely, how many species are affected? Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. 47 major civilizations have some form of diplomatic or trade relationship with the Vorthans, Kalara replied. The humans have given them 72 hours to formally condemn the attacks on medical personnel and cut all ties with the hegemony. Those who refuse will be added to what they're calling the No Mercy list. Dr. Webb joined their conversation, his expression grave. I've been monitoring military communications. The Terran Defense Forces have mobilized over 3,000 warships. They're not just defending medical facilities anymore. They're hunting down every Vorthan military unit in the galaxy. That's impossible, Dr. Chin protested. Humanity doesn't have that many warships. They've never maintained a large military presence. They do now, Webb replied grimly. Apparently, they've been secretly converting civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, research ships, even luxury yachts. Everything's been retrofitted with weapon systems and pressed into service. The shipyards around Earth are working around the clock to produce more. A new voice joined the conversation. Captain Martinez, the evacuation ship's commander, had approached their group. Doctors, I need to brief you on our destination. We're not going to Earth. Dr. Chin looked up sharply. What do you mean? Command ordered all medical personnel to return to human space. Plans have changed, the captain said. Earth has been designated as the central command for Operation Nightingale's Revenge. All rescued medical personnel are being relocated to a new facility. He activated a holographic display showing star charts. A previously unknown system appeared, marked with the Terran Federation symbol, but no other identifying information. This is Hippocrates Station, constructed in secret over the past 2 years. It's humanity's new medical research and training center, the largest medical facility ever built. The specifications that appeared on screen were staggering. Hippocrates Station was the size of a small moon, with medical bays capable of treating 1 million patients simultaneously. Research laboratories that dwarfed anything in the civilian sector. Training facilities designed to produce doctors at an unprecedented rate. Why keep it secret? Dr. Kalara asked. Captain Martinez's expression darkened. Because it's not just a medical facility. It's also a weapons research center. Every medical breakthrough, every biological discovery, every advancement in healing technology is being analyzed for its potential military applications. Dr. Chun felt her stomach lurch. You're talking about biological weapons. I'm talking about applied medical knowledge, the captain corrected. The researchers at Hippocrates Station aren't developing plagues or toxins. They're developing precise instruments of suffering, ways to cause maximum pain while keeping targets alive and conscious, methods to disable biological functions without causing death, techniques to induce psychological trauma through direct neural manipulation. The passenger compartment had fallen silent. Every rescued medical professional was listening now, their faces reflecting the same mixture of horror and fascination. The Vorthans declared war on the concept of healing. Captain Martinez continued. The Terran Federation has decided to show them what the opposite of healing looks like when it's applied by people who understand biology better than anyone else in the galaxy. Dr. Webb spoke up. Captain, what you're describing, it's a violation of everything we swore to uphold when we took the healer's oath. First, do no harm. Doctor, the captain replied quietly, 40,000 healers who took that same oath are dead. The Vorthans made the rules. They decided that medical knowledge makes you a military target. Very well, we're military targets now, but we're not defenseless ones. A communication alert echoed through the ship. All passengers report to viewing stations. We are approaching Hippocrates Station. Dr. Chun made her way to the nearest viewport, along with dozens of other rescued personnel. What she saw redefined her understanding of human capabilities. Hippocrates Station hung in space like a metallic planet, its surface covered with what were obviously medical facilities marked with red crosses. But surrounding it was the largest military fleet Sarah had ever seen. Thousands of ships, ranging from nimble destroyers to massive dreadnoughts that seemed large enough to crack moons. My God, whispered Dr. Kalara. When did humans build all of this? We've been building it for decades, said a new voice. Dr. Chun turned to see a man in pristine Terran military uniform approaching. His shoulder insignia identified him as a full admiral. We just weren't advertising it. Admiral Chun extended his hand to Sarah. Dr. Chun, I'm Admiral David Harrison, Director of Hippocratic Operations. I understand you were present during the attack on Healing Hand Station. Sarah shook his hand numbly. Admiral, I'm confused. I thought Admiral Rebecca Harrison was in command of Terran Defense Forces. My wife, Admiral Harrison, replied matter-of-factly. We've been planning for this possibility for quite some time. Rebecca handles the stick. I handle the carrot. The carrot. Medical care, the Admiral explained as their ship docked with a massive station. The species that stand with us against Vorthan barbarism will receive the most advanced medical care in galactic history. Those that don't, he shrugged. Well, they'll discover what life was like before Terran medicine. As they disembarked, Dr. Chin found herself in corridors that were simultaneously familiar and alien. Everything was designed like a medical facility, with clean white walls and clearly marked emergency stations. But the personnel wore military uniforms, and weapons lockers were positioned alongside medical supply cabinets. Doctor, you'll be assigned to Section 7, Admiral Harrison said, guiding her through the station. Advanced Physiological Warfare Research. Your experience with Zephyrin anatomy makes you particularly valuable. Physiological warfare? Sarah asked, though she was beginning to understand what the term meant. The Vorthans want to fight dirty, the Admiral replied. They've made it clear that medical knowledge is a weapon in their eyes. We're simply accepting their logic and applying it more efficiently than they thought possible. They passed a series of laboratories where human researchers worked alongside medical professionals from dozens of species. Through transparent aluminum windows, Sarah could see experiments in progress that made her blood run cold. Vorthan prisoners were hooked up to monitoring equipment while researchers tested various stimuli. We're not torturing them, Admiral Harrison said, noticing her expression. We're conducting medical research, learning exactly how their nervous systems function, how their pain receptors work, how their psychology responds to various stimuli. Purely for scientific purposes, of course. Admiral, this is... Sarah began, but he cut her off. This is what they chose when they attacked healers, Admiral Harrison said firmly. Dr. Chun, I want you to understand something. We didn't want this war. We try to be the good guys. We tried to heal instead of harm, to build instead of destroy, to show mercy instead of seeking vengeance. They stopped at a viewing station that looked out into space. The Vorthan fleet wreckage from their rescue operation was visible in the distance, still drifting lifeless through the void. But they made a critical error in judgment, the Admiral continued. They assumed that because we chose to heal, we didn't know how to hurt. They forgot that the species capable of the most advanced medicine is also capable of the most advanced methods of causing suffering. A communication alert echoed through the station. Admiral Harrison to Command Center. Priority 1 message from Vorthan High Command. Admiral Harrison activated his communicator. Routed to Laboratory 7. Dr. Chin should hear this. The holographic display showed a Vorthan military leader, his scaled features twisted with arrogance. Human Admiral, we have received your pathetic ultimatum. The hegemony does not negotiate with soft-hearted healers turned pretend soldiers. Your threats are meaningless. The Vorthan commander leaned forward. We have destroyed your healing stations because those who heal our enemies are our enemies. This is simple logic. Surrender now, and we will permit your medical personnel to serve hegemony forces exclusively. Admiral Harrison listened impassively, then activated his response transmission. Vorthan High Command, your message is acknowledged. You have 47 hours and 36 minutes remaining in your grace period. We strongly encourage you to reconsider your position. Grace period? The Vorthan commander scoffed. You offer us grace? You are healers playing at being warriors. We are a species bred for conquest. What could you possibly do to threaten us? Admiral Harrison smiled, and Dr. Chin found the expression more terrifying than any weapon she had ever seen. We're going to cure you, the Admiral said simply. The Vorthan commander's confusion was obvious. Cure us? Of what disease? Of life, Admiral Harrison replied. Our medical staff has spent the last 72 hours developing what we call therapeutic weapons. Devices that use detailed biological knowledge to cause precise, measured suffering. We know exactly how your nervous system functions, exactly which neural pathways to stimulate to cause maximum agony, exactly how to keep you conscious and aware while your body slowly fails. The Admiral gestured to the laboratories around them. We have weapons that will cause every pain receptor in your body to fire simultaneously while keeping you alive for weeks. Devices that will make your own immune system attack your nervous tissue. Treatments that will cause every bone in your body to feel like it's breaking continuously. Dr. Chun watched the Vorthan commander's expression change from arrogance to uncertainty to something approaching fear. But here's the beautiful part, Admiral Harrison continued. It's all medical treatment. Technically speaking, we're not trying to kill you. We're trying to cure you of your aggression by demonstrating the consequences of attacking healers. Every moment of agony will be precisely monitored to ensure optimal therapeutic value. The transmission paused as the implications sank in. When you attacked our healers, you taught us something valuable, Admiral Harrison said. You taught us that mercy is a choice, not a weakness. You taught us that some beings interpret compassion as an invitation to cause harm. Most importantly, you taught us what we become when we stop choosing to heal and start choosing to hurt. The Admiral's voice dropped to barely above a whisper, but every word carried the weight of absolute certainty. We are the species that conquered every disease on our planet. We eliminated aging. We regrew severed limbs and brought the dead back to life. We became so skilled at preserving and enhancing biological function that death itself became optional. Admiral Harrison leaned forward, speaking directly into the camera. Have you considered what beings capable of such mastery over life can do when they decide to master death instead? The transmission ended, leaving the laboratory in absolute silence. Dr. Chun stared at the Admiral, finally understanding the full scope of what was happening. Humanity hadn't just mobilized a military force. They had weaponized their greatest strength, turning centuries of medical advancement into instruments of precise, calculated suffering. Admiral, she said quietly, what have we become? Admiral Harrison looked out at the stars, where Terran fleets were hunting Vorthan forces throughout the galaxy. We've become what they forced us to be, he replied. The question now is whether they're strong enough to survive the treatment. The countdown reached zero at exactly 0600 hours Galactic Standard Time. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the observation deck of Hippocrates Station, watching through reinforced viewports as humanity's response to the systematic murder of healers began. Around her, medical personnel from dozens of species watched in stunned silence as the largest military operation in galactic history commenced. Operation Nightingale's Revenge is now active, Admiral Harrison announced over the station's communication system. All units commence therapeutic intervention. Throughout the galaxy, Terran fleets that had been positioning themselves for 72 hours began their coordinated assault. But what unfolded wasn't a traditional military engagement. It was something far more methodical, more precise, and infinitely more terrifying. Dr. Chin watched the tactical displays as reports streamed in from across known space. The first target was the Vorthan Military Academy on Hegemin Prime, where future officers are trained in the art of total warfare that included targeting civilian medical facilities. The Terran fleet that approached the academy consisted of ships with names that would have been unthinkable just days ago. Hippocrates' Bane, Surgical Strike, Anesthesia's End, and Triage's Revenge. Their hulls were pristine white with red medical crosses, but their weapons systems represented the pinnacle of human technological advancement. Hegemin Prime Defense Fleet, this is Captain Williams of the Terran Medical Intervention Force, came the transmission that echoed through space. You are harboring personnel responsible for attacks on neutral medical facilities. prepare for therapeutic treatment. The Vorthan response was predictably aggressive. Human vessel, withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You have no authority in hegemony space. Captain Williams' reply was delivered with the calm precision of a surgeon explaining a procedure. Under the Emergency Medical Powers Act passed unanimously by the Terran Senate, we are authorized to provide corrective treatment to any individual or organization that threatens galactic medical neutrality. Please prepare your personnel for intensive care. What followed redefined the concept of warfare. The Terran ships didn't simply attack the Vorthan fleet. They systematically disabled each vessel using weapons designed by doctors who understood Vorthan physiology better than the Vorthans themselves. Dr. Chun watched in horrified fascination as the surgical strike fired what appeared to be modified medical scanners. The beams passed through Vorthan hull armor without causing structural damage, but the effects on the crew were immediate and devastating. Every Vorthan aboard the targeted ships began experiencing symptoms that their own medical staff couldn't identify or treat. Neural disruption beams, explained Dr. Martinez, who had joined the observation group. They stimulate specific pain receptors in the Vorthan nervous system while leaving all other biological functions intact. The subjects experience agony equivalent to having every bone in their body broken repeatedly, but they remain conscious and fully aware. The Vorthan fleet's communications filled with increasingly desperate pleas for mercy, requests for medical assistance, and, finally, incoherent screaming. But the Terran ships made no move to provide aid. Hegemon Prime Defense Fleet, this is Captain Williams, came the cold response to the Vorthan pleas. You are experiencing the same level of medical compassion that you showed to the 40,000 healers you murdered. We will monitor your condition to ensure you remain conscious throughout the treatment. The Terran forces systematically targeted every Vorthan military installation, government facility, and weapons production center. But instead of destroying these targets, they rendered them useless through precisely applied medical knowledge. Weapons factories fell silent as their workers were afflicted with temporary but excruciating neural conditions that made concentration impossible. Government buildings emptied as officials experienced carefully induced symptoms that mimicked every painful disease known to Vorthan medical science, but without any actual tissue damage that their doctors could treat. Military bases became hospitals as thousands of soldiers experienced identical mysterious symptoms that caused unbearable suffering while leaving them physically healthy. Vorthan medical facilities found themselves overwhelmed with patients whose conditions defied all known treatments. Status report from all sectors. Admiral Harrison requested as the initial phase of operations concluded. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The pattern was being repeated on every Vorthan world simultaneously. 47 separate fleets were conducting identical operations, turning the entire hegemony into a medical crisis zone without firing a single shot that would be considered lethal under traditional rules of warfare. Vorthan military capacity reduced by 97%, reported Captain Anderson for the Tactical Center. No confirmed fatalities. Estimated casualties requiring medical intervention, approximately 40 million. Dr. Chun felt her knees go weak. 40 million? Precisely the number of beings who would have been saved by the medical personnel the Vorthans murdered, Admiral Harrison said quietly. Our medical staff calculated the exact number of lives that would have been lost due to the destruction of galactic medical infrastructure. We're providing the Vorthans with a proportional therapeutic experience. The implications were staggering. Humanity had essentially turned an entire interstellar civilization into patients requiring constant medical care, while simultaneously ensuring that the symptoms they experienced couldn't be treated by conventional Vorthan medicine. Admiral Dr. Chin said, struggling to find her voice, this is biological warfare on an unprecedented scale. No, Doctor, Admiral Harrison corrected. This is medical intervention. Every single weapon system we deployed was developed from healing technology. Every symptom our targets are experiencing is treatable using Terran medical knowledge. We're not trying to kill them. We're trying to cure them of their aggression. As if to prove his point, Admiral Harrison activated another transmission to Vorthan High Command. Vorthan Hegemony Leadership. This is Admiral Harrison of the Terran Medical Intervention Force. You are currently experiencing what we call therapeutic correction. Your entire military and government infrastructure has been rendered non-functional through the application of advanced medical techniques. The response from Vorthan High Command was barely coherent, transmitted by officials who were clearly struggling with whatever symptoms had been inflicted upon them. Humans, stop this madness, we surrender. Admiral Harrison's expression didn't change. Vorthan leadership. Surrender is not available under your own rules of engagement. You declare that showing mercy to enemies constitutes an act of war. You stated that medical neutrality is a form of military support for hostile forces. We are simply applying your logical framework consistently. The Admiral paused, consulting data on his personal display. However, we are prepared to offer alternative treatment options. The Terran Federation is willing to provide immediate medical relief to all affected Vorthan personnel in exchange for the following conditions. The conditions that appeared on screen were more devastating than any military defeat in galactic history. First, the Vorthan hegemony would formally surrender all claims to sovereignty over non-Vorthan populations. Every species under hegemony control would be immediately granted independence. Second, all Vorthan military forces would be disbanded and their ships transferred to a joint galactic peacekeeping force commanded by species that had honored medical neutrality. Third, the Vorthan government would be restructured under the supervision of the Galactic Medical Council, with human medical personnel holding veto power over all policy decisions. Fourth, every Vorthan world would be required to establish medical facilities staffed by non-Vorthan personnel with absolute guarantees of neutrality and protection. Fifth, the hegemony would pay reparations equal to the cost of rebuilding every medical facility they had destroyed, plus compensation for every medical professional they had killed. These conditions will remain in effect until the Galactic Medical Council certifies that Vorthan civilization no longer poses a threat to medical neutrality, Admiral Harrison concluded. Failure to comply will result in the continuation of therapeutic treatment indefinitely. Dr. Chin stared at the terms in disbelief. Admiral, you're demanding the complete transformation of their entire civilization. We're demanding that they stop being a threat to healers, Admiral Harrison replied. The medical community spent centuries building a system where healing was sacred, where doctors could treat patients regardless of politics or species. The Vorthans destroyed that system in a single day. The Admiral turned to face the assembled medical personnel. Do you want to know why we built Hippocrates Station in secret? Why we developed weapons systems disguised as medical research? Because we knew this day would come. We knew that eventually someone would decide that compassion was weakness and that healers were legitimate targets. Admiral Harrison activated another display, showing casualty reports from the Vorthan attacks. 40,000 medical professionals are dead. Dr. Elena Vasquez, who developed treatments for Kalari bone rot. Dr. Singh Patel, who created artificial organs for wounded Zephyrian soldiers. Dr. Maria Santos, who spent her entire career developing cures for genetic diseases that affected 17 different species. The list of names seemed endless, each representing a lifetime of dedication to healing that had been snuffed out by Vorthan weapons. The Vorthans didn't just attack people, Admiral Harrison continued. They attacked the very idea that suffering should be alleviated regardless of politics. They declared war on mercy itself. A new communication alert interrupted the Admiral's speech. Priority transmission from the Kalari Alliance. The holographic display showed Chancellor Vree, the Kalari leader whose crystalline features reflected the strain of recent events. Admiral Harrison, the Kalari Alliance formally requests Terran medical assistance. Our border colonies are experiencing massive casualties from Vorthan raids. Our own medical facilities are insufficient to handle the crisis. Admiral Harrison nodded. Chancellor, Terran medical ships are already en route to your space. We're prepared to provide unlimited medical support to all species that formally condemn attacks on medical neutrality. What are your terms? Chancellor Vree asked. No terms, Admiral Harrison replied. Healing doesn't come with conditions. That's what the Vorthins never understood. The transmission ended, and Dr. Chen realized she was witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Humanity was simultaneously conducting the most devastating military campaign ever recorded while offering unlimited medical aid to anyone who opposed the forces that had attacked healers. Dr. Chen, Admiral Harrison said, you'll be leading one of our medical intervention teams to Kalari space. Your mission is to provide emergency care to casualties from Vorthin attacks. What about the therapeutic correction of Vorthin forces? Dr. Chen asked. That continues until they meet our conditions, Admiral Harrison replied matter-of-factly. Dr. Chen, I want you to understand something crucial. We're not torturing the Vorthins out of revenge. We're demonstrating what the galaxy looks like when medical knowledge is used as a weapon instead of a tool for healing. Admiral Harrison gestured toward the tactical displays showing the ongoing operations throughout Vorthin space. Every symptom they're experiencing, every moment of suffering, every desperate plea for medical aid that goes unanswered is exactly what would have happened to millions of beings if the galactic medical infrastructure they destroyed had remained in ruins. Dr. Chun finally understood the full scope of humanity's strategy. They weren't just punishing the Vorthins. They were teaching the entire galaxy a lesson about the true value of medical neutrality. The other species are watching, Admiral Harrison continued. They're seeing what happens when healers become warriors. They're learning that the choice to show mercy isn't weakness. It's what keeps apex predators from doing what apex predators do best. As if summoned by his words, reports began flooding in from across the galaxy. Species after species was formally condemning Vorthin attacks on medical personnel and requesting Terran medical assistance. Trade agreements were being canceled. Diplomatic ties were being severed. The Vorthins were becoming isolated as the rest of the galaxy realized what they had unleashed. Admiral, reported Captain Anderson, we're receiving surrender offers from 43 separate Vorthin worlds. They're requesting immediate medical intervention and offering to meet all our conditions. Admiral Harrison considered this for a moment. Accepted. Begin medical relief operations immediately. But maintain therapeutic correction on Hegemon Prime and all military installations until total compliance is verified. Dr. Chun watched as the most powerful military operation in history began transitioning into the largest medical relief effort ever conducted. Terran ships that had been inflicting precisely calculated suffering were suddenly deploying emergency medical teams and hospital facilities. Admiral Harrison said, your transport leaves in 2 hours. You'll be establishing a field hospital on Kalari Prime. Show them what human medicine can accomplish when it's focused on healing instead of harm. As Dr. Chun prepared to return to the role she had trained for her entire life, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed. Humanity had revealed capabilities that redefined their place in the galactic community. They had shown that the species capable of the most advanced healing was also capable of the most sophisticated methods of causing suffering. But more importantly, they had demonstrated that the choice between healing and harming was exactly that, a choice. The Vorthins had made their choice when they attacked medical personnel. Now, they were learning to live with the consequences of assuming that mercy was weakness rather than strength held in careful restraint. The galaxy would never look at human medical personnel the same way again. And perhaps, Dr. Chun thought as she gathered her medical supplies, that was exactly the lesson the universe needed to learn 6 months after Operation Nightingale's revenge began. Dr. Sarachin stood in the emergency ward of the new Kalari Medical Center, watching her human and alien staff work together to save lives with an efficiency that would have been impossible before the war. The medical facility on Kalari Prime had been built in record time using advanced Terran construction techniques. It was a monument to what human medicine could achieve when backed by unlimited resources and political will. The facility could treat 10,000 patients simultaneously and possessed medical technology that surpassed anything previously seen in the galaxy. But it was the political changes surrounding the facility that truly demonstrated how completely the galactic balance of power had shifted. Dr. Chun, called Dr. Vex, a Kalari physician who had become her deputy chief of staff, were receiving an emergency transmission from the Rigel sector. Another outbreak of crimson fever. Dr. Chun nodded, pulling up the patient data on her console. Crimson fever was a disease that had plagued multiple species for centuries, killing millions annually. Before the war, treating it required resources and expertise that most civilizations couldn't afford. Now, it was just another item on the daily schedule. Prep a medical intervention team, she ordered. Full epidemic response package. How many cases? Approximately 50,000 confirmed, potentially twice that number exposed, Dr. Vex replied. The local government is requesting immediate Terran medical assistance. Dr. Chun activated the communication system that connected her facility to the Terran Medical Command Network. Within seconds, she was speaking with coordinators on Hippocrates Station who could deploy resources anywhere in the galaxy. Medical Command, this is Dr. Chun at Kalari Prime. Requesting epidemic response authorization for Rigel Sector Crimson Fever outbreak. Authorization granted, Dr. Chun, came the immediate reply. Hospital ship Mercy Restored is jumping to your coordinates with full treatment facilities. Estimated arrival time, 4 hours. It was this level of response capability that had transformed the galaxy's medical landscape. The Terran Federation had learned to treat medical crises with the same urgency and resource allocation that they had previously reserved for military threats. The result was a healthcare system that could respond to any emergency anywhere in known space within hours. But the speed and scale of human medical intervention wasn't the only change. The political framework that enabled it represented a fundamental restructuring of galactic civilization. Dr. Chun, Dr. Vex continued, the Rigel government is also reporting that they've expelled the Vorthan trade delegation and formally adopted the Medical Neutrality Accords. They're requesting membership in the Galactic Health Alliance. Dr. Chun smiled. The Galactic Health Alliance had emerged as the dominant political force in the galaxy, encompassing every species that had condemned attacks on medical personnel. Member worlds received unlimited access to Terran medical technology and expertise. Non-member worlds received basic humanitarian aid, but nothing more. The Vorthans, meanwhile, continued to experience what Admiral Harrison euphemistically called ongoing therapeutic correction. Any word from Vorthan space? Dr. Chen asked. Dr. Vex's crystalline features reflected the ambient light as he consulted his datapad. The latest reports indicate that Hegeman Prime is still experiencing widespread medical emergencies. Vorthan High Command issued another surrender offer yesterday, but they're still refusing to meet the full terms for ending therapeutic intervention. Dr. Chun pulled up the current status reports for Vorthan territory. The images were stark. Once proud military installations sat empty as their personnel remained incapacitated by precisely administered medical conditions. Government buildings functioned with skeleton crews of officials who could work through their artificially induced symptoms. Entire planets had essentially become medical facilities as the population struggled with conditions that Vorthan medicine couldn't treat, but which Terran doctors could cure instantly. The psychological impact was perhaps even more devastating than the physical effects. The Vorthans, who had built their entire civilization around the concept of strength through conquest, were now completely dependent on the mercy of the weak medical professionals they had targeted. Have they met any of the conditions? Dr. Chen asked. Partial compliance only, Dr. Vex replied. They've released most of their client species and disbanded about 60% of their military forces. But they're still refusing to accept external oversight of their government or pay full reparations for the medical personnel they murdered. Dr. Chun understood the Terran strategy. The humans could maintain therapeutic correction indefinitely without any strain on their resources. Meanwhile, Every day that passed saw more species joining the Galactic Health Alliance, and fewer civilizations willing to maintain any relationship with the Vorthons. Dr. Chun interrupted a new voice. Dr. Chun turned to see Dr. Yar, a Zephyrian physician who had joined their staff 2 months earlier. Priority message from Admiral Harrison. The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Harrison in his command center aboard Hippocrates Station. Behind him, Dr. Chun could see the massive displays showing medical operations throughout the galaxy. Dr. Chun, I'm transmitting a special assignment. We've received a request from an unexpected source. The display shifted to show a communication that made Dr. Chen's breath catch. It was from Dr. Keth, a prominent Vorthan physician who had worked alongside human doctors before the war. Admiral Harrison, this is Dr. Keth of the Hegemon Prime Medical Authority. I am transmitting on behalf of a group of Vorthan medical professionals who opposed our government's attacks on neutral medical facilities. The Vorthan doctor's image showed the strain of months under therapeutic correction, but his voice remained steady. We formally request asylum with the Terran Federation and permission to establish a Vorthan medical resistance organization. We wish to provide aid to our own people while working toward full compliance with Galactic Health Alliance requirements. Admiral Harrison's expression was thoughtful. Dr. Chun, your facility has been selected to host the first Vorthan medical refugees. We want to demonstrate that our opposition is to Vorthan aggression, not to individual Vorthans who embrace medical neutrality. Dr. Chun felt a mixture of emotions. Working with Vorthan doctors who had opposed their government's actions will be a powerful symbol of the principles they were fighting to protect. But it would also mean treating former enemies as colleagues. How many refugees, Admiral? Initially, 50 medical professionals and their families. Dr. Keth has provided intelligence about secret medical facilities on Vorthan worlds where doctors have been attempting to treat the therapeutic correction symptoms in violation of government orders. This information was significant. If Vorthan doctors were defying their own government to provide medical aid, it demonstrated that the human strategy was working exactly as intended. The choice between maintaining aggression and seeking medical relief was tearing Vorthan society apart. Admiral, Dr. Chin said, what's the latest assessment of Vorthan compliance? Improving, but still insufficient, Admiral Harrison replied. They've met 3 of our 5 primary conditions, but they're balking at external oversight and full reparations. Our psychological analysis suggests they view compliance as a sign of weakness that would undermine their entire cultural identity. Dr. Chin understood the dilemma. The Vorthans had built their civilization around concepts of strength and dominance. Accepting complete defeat would require them to fundamentally restructure their society. What's our timeline, Admiral? No timeline, Admiral Harrison said firmly. Therapeutic correction continues until full compliance is achieved. We've demonstrated that we can maintain current operations indefinitely without straining our resources. Time is on our side. The transmission ended, leaving Dr. Chun to consider the implications. Humanity had essentially placed an entire interstellar civilization under house arrest, while simultaneously providing unlimited medical aid to the rest of the galaxy. The contrast was stark and intentional. Dr. Chun, Dr. Vex said quietly, "Do you think the Vorthans will eventually comply fully?" Dr. Chun considered the question carefully. They don't have a choice, Vex. Every day they delay, more of their allies abandon them, and more of their own people begin questioning the government that brought this catastrophe upon them. As if summoned by her words, an emergency alert echoed through the medical center. All staff to emergency stations. Incoming medical transport with Vorthan refugees. Dr. Chun made her way to the receiving bay, joined by her senior staff. The transport that docked bore Terran Federation markings, but its passengers were clearly Vorthan. Dr. Chun could see dozens of scaled beings, many carrying medical supplies and equipment. The first to disembark was Dr. Keth, whom Dr. Chun recognized from his transmission. The Vorthan physician approached cautiously, his reptilian features reflecting uncertainty. Dr. Chen, I am Dr. Kate. I thank you for providing sanctuary for those of us who believe that healing should transcend politics. Dr. Chun extended her hand, noting how the gesture seemed to surprise the Vorthan doctor. Dr. Keth, welcome to Kalari Prime Medical Center. We've prepared quarters for your people and positions for any who wish to join our staff. Dr. Keth's expression reflected a mixture of relief and amazement. You would trust former enemies to treat your patients? You're not former enemies, Dr. Chen replied. You're medical professionals who opposed attacks on healers. That makes you colleagues, regardless of your species. As they toured the facility, Dr. Keth explained the situation on Vorthan worlds. The therapeutic correction had created a medical crisis that exceeded anything in hegemony history. Millions of Vorthans experienced daily symptoms that their doctors couldn't treat, creating a population that was completely dependent on government promises to eventually reach an agreement with the humans. The government maintains that compliance would be a surrender that would destroy our cultural identity, Dr. Keth explained. But many of us believe that attacking healers already destroyed everything worth preserving about Vorthan civilization. Dr. Chun understood the internal conflict tearing Vorthan society apart. The choice between maintaining their aggressive cultural identity and ending the suffering of their people was exactly the kind of impossible decision that therapeutic correction was designed to create. Dr. Keth, what's your assessment? Will the hegemony eventually meet the full terms? The Vorthan doctor was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Chun, our government is composed of individuals who have never experienced personal failure. They built their careers on the belief that strength and aggression could overcome any obstacle. The idea that mercy is more powerful than violence is incomprehensible to them. But the suffering of their people isn't incomprehensible, Dr. Chin pointed out. No, Dr. Keth agreed, which is why more of us leave Vorthan space every day. Eventually, the government will be faced with a choice: rule over a population that is in constant medical crisis, or accept that they were wrong about the nature of strength. That evening, Dr. Chin stood in her office reviewing reports from across the galaxy. The transformation was remarkable. Species that had been enemies for centuries were cooperating in joint medical missions. Research projects that would have taken decades to complete were being finished in months through unprecedented collaboration. The galaxy's overall health indicators had improved dramatically despite the ongoing crisis in Vorthan space. But perhaps the most significant change was philosophical. The systematic destruction of medical neutrality had forced every species to confront a fundamental question: what kind of civilization did they want to build? One based on strength through conquest, or one based on strength through cooperation and mutual aid? The answer seemed increasingly clear. Membership in the Galactic Health Alliance continued to grow. Trade and diplomatic relationships were being restructured around principles of medical neutrality and mutual defense against those who would attack healers. The galaxy was rebuilding itself around the idea that healing was sacred. Dr. Chen's contemplation was interrupted by an emergency alert. Dr. Chen to Command Center immediately. Priority communication from Vorthan High Command. She made her way quickly to the command center, where Dr. Vex and the senior staff were gathered around the main communication display. The image that appeared showed the interior of what had once been the most powerful government complex in the galaxy. Now it looked like a hospital, with Vorthan officials hooked up to medical monitoring equipment while trying to conduct state business. Terran Federation. Came a transmission from someone who appeared to be the current Vorthan leader. This is Chancellor Vex of the Hegemony Emergency Government. We formally request immediate cessation of therapeutic correction in exchange for preliminary compliance negotiations. Admiral Harrison's response was immediate and uncompromising. Chancellor Vex, the terms for ending therapeutic correction remain unchanged. Full compliance with all 5 primary conditions, verified by independent inspection. Preliminary negotiations are not acceptable. The Vorthan leader's frustration was obvious even through the translation systems. Admiral, our people are suffering. Surely some mercy is warranted for a defeated enemy. Admiral Harrison's reply would be remembered in history books for centuries to come. Chancellor, you declared war on mercy itself when you attacked medical facilities. You stated that showing compassion to enemies constitutes an act of war. Under your own rules, providing relief to defeated enemies would be a betrayal of our allies who continue to suffer from the consequences of your actions. The Admiral paused, allowing the logic to sink in. However, mercy is available to you under the same terms it has always been available. Full recognition of medical neutrality, complete demilitarization under international supervision, reparations for your crimes, and acceptance that attacks on healers constitute crimes against civilization itself. The transmission ended with the Vorthan leader's defeat clearly visible. Dr. Chun realized she was witnessing the final act of a drama that had begun with attacks on medical stations. The Vorthans had gambled everything on the assumption that strength through violence would prevail over strength through healing. They had lost that gamble so completely that their own survival now depended on embracing the principles they had tried to destroy. Dr. Chun, Dr. Keth said quietly, I believe my government will capitulate within a month. The psychological pressure of depending entirely on their enemy's mercy while their own people suffer is becoming unbearable. Dr. Chun nodded. And when they do comply, what happens to Vorthan civilization? Dr. Keth considered the question carefully. We become something new, something better, I hope. A species that remembers the cost of attacking those who dedicate their lives to healing others. As Dr. Chun returned to her duties treating patients from across the galaxy, she reflected on the transformation that had occurred. Humanity had revealed capabilities that redefined their place in galactic civilization. But more importantly, they had demonstrated that the choice between healing and harming was the fundamental decision that determined whether a species would prosper or fall. The Vorthans had made their choice. Now they would live with the consequences until they were ready to make a better one year after the attacks on galactic medical infrastructure began. Dr. Sarah Chun stood in the Memorial Hall of Hippocrates Station, surrounded by the names of 40,000 medical professionals who had died for the crime of showing mercy to all beings regardless of species or politics. The hall was a masterpiece of architectural symbolism. Each name was inscribed on panels made from metal salvage from destroyed medical facilities, arranged in a spiral pattern that drew the eye upward toward a central holographic display showing the current state of galactic health. It was a place designed to remind visitors that every advance in healing came at a cost, and that the choice to protect healers was what separated civilization from barbarism. Today was special. Representatives from every member species of the Galactic Health Alliance had gathered for the formal signing of the new Covenant of Medical Neutrality, a document that would reshape interstellar law for generations to come. Dr. Chun called Admiral Harrison as he approached through the crowd of dignitaries. The Vorthan delegation has arrived. Dr. Chun turned to see a group of Vorthans entering the memorial hall, led by Dr. Keth, who had become the unofficial spokesman for the new Vorthan government. Behind him were officials who bore little resemblance to the arrogant military leaders who had declared war on healers just over a year ago. The transformation of Vorthan society had been complete and devastating. The old government had finally capitulated 3 months earlier when the psychological pressure of governing a population in constant medical distress became unbearable. The new leadership consisted entirely of Vorthans who had opposed the attacks on medical personnel, many of whom were medical professionals themselves. Chancellor Keth, Admiral Harrison said formally, using the Vorthan's new title, "Welcome to Hippocrates Station." Dr. Keth, now serving as the interim leader of the reformed hegemony, approached the memorial wall with visible emotion. His scaled features reflected deep sorrow as he read the names of the beings his species had murdered. Admiral, these names, they represent a form of wealth my people never understood until we lost it, Dr. Keth said quietly. Each one could have saved thousands of lives. Each one chose to heal instead of harm. and we killed them for that choice. The ceremony that followed was unlike anything in galactic history. Representatives of 73 species gathered to sign a document that didn't just re-establish medical neutrality, but fundamentally redefined the relationship between healing and warfare. The new covenant went far beyond the old medical accords. It established healing as a fundamental right of all sentient beings, created international oversight mechanisms for medical neutrality, and, most importantly, defined attacks on medical personnel as crimes against civilization itself, punishable by the full force of the galactic community. But the most revolutionary aspect of the new covenant was the enforcement mechanism. The Terran Federation had agreed to serve as the permanent guardians of galactic medical neutrality, with authority to intervene militarily against any force that threatened healers. The galaxy learned an important lesson this year, Admiral Harrison said as he addressed the assembled delegates. We discovered what happens when apex predators stop pretending to be harmless. We saw what beings capable of conquering death can accomplish when they decide to focus on causing suffering instead of preventing it. The Admiral gestured toward displays showing the current state of former Vorthan space. What had once been a military empire was now a collection of worlds focused entirely on rebuilding their medical infrastructure and repaying their debt to galactic civilization. But we also learned something more important, Admiral Harrison continued. We learned that the choice between healing and harming is what defines a species' place in the community of civilized beings. Some choose to build, some choose to destroy. The new covenant ensures that those who choose destruction will face immediate and overwhelming consequences. Dr. Chen watched the faces of the assembled delegates as Admiral Harrison spoke. Every species present had made their choice clear over the past year. They had seen what humanity could accomplish when forced to abandon healing in favor of warfare, and none of them wanted to be on the receiving end of such focused attention. Dr. Chun, said Ambassador Quill of the Kalari Alliance, would you tell us about the medical advances that have emerged from this crisis? Dr. Chun approached the podium, looking out at an audience that included some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. A year ago, she had been a simple frontier doctor. Now she was recognized as one of the architects of the new galactic order. Honorable delegates, she began, the systematic attacks on medical personnel forced humanity to make a choice. We could abandon our commitment to healing and focus on warfare, or we could find a way to make healing itself more powerful than any weapon. She activated displays showing the medical advances that had emerged from the crisis. The research conducted on Hippocrates Station had produced breakthroughs that would have taken centuries to achieve under normal circumstances. We developed treatments that can cure any disease known to galactic science. We created regeneration techniques that make death from injury nearly impossible. A species that truly masters biology can choose to use that knowledge to preserve life or to cause suffering. The choice reveals everything about their character. Chancellor Keth rose from his seat to address the assembly. His voice carried the weight of a species that had learned the hardest possible lesson about the nature of strength. Honored delegates, the Vorthan people wish to make a formal statement to this assembly. He paused, gathering himself before continuing. 1 year ago, my species made the greatest error in our history. We looked at healing and saw weakness. We looked at mercy and saw vulnerability. We convinced ourselves that those who dedicated their lives to preserving others were somehow inferior to those who dedicated their lives to destroying others. Chancellor Keth gestured toward the memorial wall. We were wrong. The humans showed us that the beings capable of the most advanced healing are also capable of the most sophisticated methods of causing harm. They demonstrated that mercy is not weakness. It is strength held in careful restraint. The Chancellor's next words would be quoted in history books throughout the galaxy. My species learned that when you attack healers, you don't get rid of healing. You get healers who know exactly how to hurt you in ways you cannot treat. The signing ceremony that followed was conducted in complete silence, except for the scratching of styluses on documents. Each representative signed not just as a diplomat, but as a being who had witnessed what happened when the galaxy's most powerful healing species decided to stop healing and start hurting. Dr. Chun was among the last to sign, her signature representing not just the Terran Federation, but all the medical professionals who had died for believing that healing should transcend politics. After the ceremony, as delegates dispersed throughout the station, Dr. Chun found herself back in the Memorial Hall with Admiral Harrison and Chancellor Keth. "Admiral," Chancellor Keth said quietly, "when will therapeutic correction of my people end completely?" Admiral Harrison consulted his datapad. "The last Vorthan worlds are scheduled to be cleared of corrective measures next month, once full compliance verification is complete. Your people will finally be free of the medical conditions we imposed." "And then?" Chancellor Keth asked. "Then, your species begins the long process of rebuilding trust with the galactic community," Admiral Harrison replied. "It will take generations to erase the memory of what you did to medical personnel. But if you remain committed to the principles of the new covenant, that trust can eventually be restored." Dr. Chen looked around the memorial hall, thinking about how profoundly everything had changed. A year ago, she had been treating patients in a medical station that was supposed to be neutral territory. Now she was helping to establish a new galactic order where neutrality was protected by the most advanced military force in known space. "Doctor," Admiral Harrison said, "any regrets about how this all turned out?" Dr. Chun considered the question carefully. Humanity had revealed capabilities that made them the dominant force in galactic politics. They had demonstrated that the choice to heal was what had kept them from showing other species what apex predators looked like when they stopped pretending to be harmless. But they had also created a galaxy where healing was truly sacred, where medical personnel could work without fear of becoming targets, and where the fundamental right to medical care was protected by international law. "No regrets, Admiral," she finally replied. "The Vorthans forced us to show the galaxy who we really are. I think that was necessary." Chancellor Keth nodded slowly. "Dr. Chun, my people have a saying now. Never anger the healers, for they know exactly where you hurt the most. Perhaps that wisdom will prevent future species from making our mistake." As the three of them stood in silence among the names of the dead, Dr. Chun reflected on the transformation that had occurred. Humanity had spent centuries trying to be the helpful, peaceful species that other civilizations could trust to treat their wounded and negotiate their disputes. The Vorthans had forced them to reveal what lay beneath that carefully maintained facade. They had shown the galaxy what happened when beings capable of conquering death decided to focus on conquest instead of healing. But perhaps most importantly, they had demonstrated that the choice between healing and harming was the fundamental decision that shaped a species' place in the universe. Those who chose to heal would be protected. Those who chose to harm healers would discover exactly how sophisticated harm could become when applied by those who understood biology better than anyone else. 6 months later, Dr. Chun stood in the newest medical facility in the galaxy, built on what had once been Hegemin Prime. The Vorthan homeworld had been transformed into a monument to medical neutrality, its military installations converted into hospitals and research centers. Former Vorthan soldiers now served as medical orderlies and transport crews, their military training redirected toward protecting and supporting medical personnel. It was a fitting irony that the species that had attacked healers was now dedicated entirely to supporting healing. Dr. Chun, called Dr. Zura, a young Vorthan physician who had been trained using human medical techniques, were receiving reports of a medical emergency in the outer colonies. Plague outbreak, possibly engineered. Dr. Chun activated the communication systems that connected every medical facility in the galaxy. Within minutes, she was coordinating with medical teams on dozens of worlds, preparing to deploy resources that would have been unimaginable before the war. Medical Command, this is Dr. Chun at Hegemin Prime Medical Center, requesting full epidemic response authorization for outer colony plague outbreak. Authorization granted, came the immediate reply from Hippocrates Station. Hospital fleets, mercy triumphant, healing's vengeance, and compassion sword are jumping to your coordinates. The ship name still made Dr. Chen smile. Humanity had never quite returned to purely peaceful naming conventions for their medical vessels. The galaxy needed occasional reminders of what healers could become when forced to choose warfare over medicine. But as she watched the most advanced medical response in galactic history deploy to combat a disease outbreak, Dr. Chen knew that the choice had been made correctly. The galaxy was safer, healthier, and more compassionate than it had ever been. The price had been steep. 40,000 medical professionals had died to teach the universe that healers were not weak, mercy was not vulnerability, and compassion was not an invitation to cause harm. But their sacrifice had created something unprecedented, a galactic civilization where healing was truly sacred, protected by beings who had proven they could master both life and death with equal skill. The Vorthans had wanted a war without mercy. They had received exactly that, delivered by the most merciful species in the galaxy. In doing so, they had learned the most important lesson in the universe. When you attack Earth's healers, you don't eliminate healing. You create angels of death who know exactly how to save you and exactly how to damn you, and who will choose based entirely on whether you threaten those who dedicate their lives to healing others. The galaxy had learned to choose wisely.